Welcome back. Take a moment and imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a single penny, and discovering that the tiny coin in your hand might be more interesting than you ever expected. Most people see a penny and think it's only worth 1 cent. But collectors know that sometimes a very ordinary-looking coin can hide a fascinating story. Today we're taking a closer look at the 1987 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that millions of people have handled but very few have truly understood. The 1987 Lincoln penny without a mint mark is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, one of the most recognizable coins in American history. The design features the portrait of President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. At first glance, the coin looks completely ordinary, almost identical to thousands of other pennies made during the late 20th century. Yet collectors often stop and look twice when they see one dated 1987 without a mint mark, because that small detail can raise a lot of questions. To understand this coin, we need to go back to the history of the Lincoln cent itself. The Lincoln penny was first introduced in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first regular U.S. coin to feature the portrait of a real person. The design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, and it quickly became one of the most beloved coins ever produced by the United States Mint. By the time 1987 arrived, the Lincoln penny had already been circulating in American pockets for nearly 8 decades. During this period, pennies were produced at several different mints across the United States. The main locations included Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins produced at Denver typically carry a small D mint mark, while those from San Francisco often carry an S. However, coins produced at the Philadelphia Mint traditionally did not include a mint mark for most of the 20th century. That's exactly why the 1987 penny with no mint mark exists. It was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, which at the time was responsible for producing enormous quantities of pennies to meet the country's demand for everyday change. In fact, in 1987, the Philadelphia Mint struck more than 4 billion Lincoln cents. That number alone tells us something important. The coin itself is not rare simply because it lacks a mint mark. Millions and millions were made. But that does not mean every 1987 no mint mark penny is the same. In the world of coin collecting, small differences can make a very big impact. The metal composition of the 1987 penny is one interesting detail. Earlier pennies were made mostly from copper, but in 1982 the United States Mint changed the composition due to rising copper prices. By 1987, the Lincoln cent was made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. This gave the coin its familiar copper color while using much less copper overall. If you were to weigh a typical 1987 Lincoln penny, it would come in at about 2.5 grams. That weight is a useful clue for collectors because it confirms the coin follows the modern zinc-based composition. It also helps collectors identify unusual pieces, since a different weight might suggest an error coin or something unusual happened during production. Another important feature of the coin is its design. On the front, Abraham Lincoln faces to the right. Above his head are the words, "In God we trust." To the left of the portrait is the word "Liberty," and the date, 1987, appears on the right side. On the reverse side, the Lincoln Memorial is shown in remarkable detail. If you look closely, you can even see the tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial between the columns. Above the building are the words United States of America and E Pluribus Unum, while the value 1 cent appears at the bottom. Now here is where things start to get more interesting for collectors. While billions of 1987 pennies were produced, certain varieties and errors can make individual coins far more valuable than their face value. Minting errors are one of the biggest reasons a coin from an ordinary year can suddenly become exciting. Some collectors search for 1987 pennies with double die errors. A double die occurs when the coin's design is stamped in a slightly misaligned way, causing letters or numbers to appear doubled. When this happens, you might notice the date or parts of the lettering looking thicker or slightly shadowed. These types of coins can attract serious attention from collectors because they represent a mistake during the production process. Another type of error sometimes found on Lincoln pennies is an off-center strike. This happens when the coin blank is not perfectly aligned during minting. As a result, part of the design may be missing, while another section shows extra blank space. Coins with strong off-center strikes can become quite collectible, especially if the date is still visible. There are also examples of coins with die cracks, where a small crack in the minting die creates a raised line on the coin's surface. While minor die cracks are fairly common, larger ones can make a coin stand out to collectors who enjoy studying mint errors. So, how valuable can a 1987 Lincoln penny with no mint mark actually be? For most coins that have been heavily circulated, the value usually remains close to 1 cent. However, coins in exceptional condition can be worth more. When collectors talk about condition, they often refer to how well the coin has been preserved. A coin that still shows its original mint luster, sharp details, and no wear is considered to be in uncirculated condition. Uncirculated 1987 pennies graded at very high levels by professional grading services can sell for several dollars, and sometimes even higher depending on their quality. For example, coins graded near the top of the scale, such as MS-67 or above, have sold for tens of dollars at auctions. While that may not sound like a fortune, it shows how condition alone can dramatically change the value of a common coin. Error coins can bring even stronger prices. A well-known double die or dramatic mint error from 1987 could potentially sell for much more, especially if the error is clearly visible and verified by a professional grading company. Some collectors are willing to pay significant premiums for coins that combine rarity, eye appeal, and an interesting story. If you think you might have a valuable 1987 penny, there are a few simple things to check. First, look carefully at the front of the coin to confirm the date reads 1987. Next, check just below the date area to see whether a mint mark is present. If there is no small letter under the date, that indicates the coin was produced in Philadelphia. After that, examine the coin closely under good lighting. A magnifying glass can help you spot unusual features such as doubled lettering, strange shapes in the design, or other irregularities. Also check the coin's overall condition. Coins that appear bright, sharply detailed, and free of scratches often attract more attention from collectors. Another helpful step is to weigh the coin using a precise digital scale. As mentioned earlier, a normal 1987 penny should weigh around 2.5 grams. If the weight is significantly different, it could be a sign that something unusual happened during the minting process. One fascinating detail about the Lincoln Memorial design is that it remained on the reverse of the penny for exactly 50 years, from 1959 until 2008. That means the 1987 penny belongs to a long era of American coinage where the same iconic design was used for decades. In 2009, the reverse design changed to celebrate Lincoln's 200th birthday with several special editions. A new permanent design followed in 2010. Another surprising fact is that pennies cost more to produce than their face value. In modern times, it often costs the U.S. Mint more than 1 cent to manufacture a single penny. Despite this, the coin remains in circulation and continues to be produced because it plays an important role in everyday transactions and pricing. Collectors also love Lincoln pennies because they are easy to find and fun to study. Unlike rare gold coins locked away in vaults, pennies can still appear in pocket change. That sense of discovery is part of the excitement. Someone might open an old jar of coins, search through a roll from the bank, or simply check the pennies they receive as change at a store. Every coin becomes a tiny piece of history waiting to be explored. The 1987 no-mint mark Lincoln penny may not be the rarest coin ever made, but it represents something important about coin collecting. It reminds us that value is not always obvious. Sometimes the most ordinary objects can hold hidden details that tell a bigger story about history, craftsmanship, and the people who collect them. For many collectors, the thrill comes from paying attention to those details. A small difference in a letter, a subtle doubling in the date, or an unusual strike can turn a simple penny into a conversation piece. And because billions of these coins were made, there is always the possibility that a rare error is still waiting to be discovered. So the next time you see a penny dated 1987 without a mint mark, take a closer look before tossing it aside. That tiny coin has traveled through decades of American life, passing from hand to hand, store to store, and pocket to pocket. It carries the image of one of the nation's most respected presidents and represents more than 100 years of coin-making tradition. And who knows, the penny you almost ignored might be the one that reveals a surprising detail, an unusual error, or a hidden collectible treasure. Sometimes the smallest coins hold the biggest stories. Imagine pulling a penny from your pocket that looks completely ordinary, something you might normally ignore or drop into a jar without a second thought. Now imagine discovering that this small copper-colored coin could actually be worth far more than 1 cent. For many collectors, that surprising moment has happened more than once. And one coin that continues to spark curiosity is the 1988 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, the 1988 Lincoln penny without a mint mark might seem like nothing special. Millions of these coins were produced, and many people still find them in circulation today. But in the world of coin collecting, even a common coin can hide unusual varieties, valuable errors, and fascinating history. That is exactly why collectors continue to search through their change looking for certain versions of this 1988 penny. The Lincoln penny itself has a long and meaningful history in the United States. The coin was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first regular United States coin to feature a real historical person instead of a symbolic figure like Liberty. The design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, and it quickly became one of the most recognizable coins in American history. By 1988, the Lincoln penny had already been circulating for nearly 8 decades. The coin still featured Abraham Lincoln's profile on the front, facing to the right. Above his head was the word Liberty, the date appeared to the right, and the national motto "In God We Trust" was displayed across the top. On the back of the coin in 1988 was the classic wheat replacement design that had been used since 1959. This design showed the Lincoln Memorial Building in Washington, D.C. If you look closely at the memorial, you can actually see a tiny image of the Lincoln statue inside the building. That means Lincoln appears on both sides of the coin, a detail many people never notice. Now here is where the no mint mark part becomes interesting. In the United States, coins are produced at several different mints. Each mint usually places a small letter on the coin to show where it was made. For example, a D stands for the Denver Mint, and an S represents the San Francisco Mint. However, coins made at the Philadelphia Mint traditionally did not carry a mint mark for many years. That means if you see a 1988 Lincoln penny with no letter under the date, it was struck in Philadelphia. In 1988, the Philadelphia Mint produced an enormous number of pennies. In fact, more than 6 billion 1988 Lincoln cents were struck there. Because of that huge number, most of these coins are still considered common. But certain varieties from that year have attracted serious attention from collectors. One of the most famous varieties, from 1988, involves the letter D. Some Denver coins from that year were struck using a different style of mint mark punch. This created what collectors call the 1988 D over D variety. But interestingly, the Philadelphia coins without a mint mark are also studied closely, because collectors examine them for subtle design differences and possible striking errors. Another important detail about the 1988 penny is the metal composition. Earlier Lincoln pennies were made mostly of copper. But in 1982, the United States Mint changed the metal to save money. Starting that year, most pennies were made from zinc with a thin copper coating on the outside. The 1988 penny follows this newer composition. It is about 97.5% zinc with only 2.5% copper plating. That means the coin looks like copper, but the inside is mostly zinc. This change helped reduce production costs as copper prices continued to rise. Even though the metal changed, the coin kept its familiar appearance. The diameter stayed the same at about 19 millimeters, and the coin still weighed approximately 2.5 grams. Now you might be wondering why collectors pay attention to such a common coin. The answer lies in condition, errors, and varieties. Most 1988 pennies that you find in pocket change are heavily circulated. They have scratches, fading, and worn details. These coins are usually worth only their face value of 1 cent, but when a coin survives in nearly perfect condition, collectors begin to take notice. Coins that were never used in circulation are called uncirculated coins. When graded by professional coin grading companies, the very best examples can reach extremely high grades such as MS67 or MS68. At those levels, even a common penny can become surprisingly valuable. For example, high-grade 1988 Lincoln pennies without a mint mark have sold for much higher prices than most people expect. In some auctions, exceptional uncirculated coins have sold for more than $100, and sometimes several $100 depending on their condition and certification. But the real excitement comes when collectors discover unusual minting errors. Mint errors happen when something goes wrong during the coin production process. A coin might be struck slightly off-center, stamped with a doubled image, or pressed with worn dies that leave unusual marks. Some collectors have reported double die effects on certain 1988 Lincoln cents. This means parts of the design appear slightly doubled because the die used to stamp the coin had a misalignment during creation. When this happens, letters or numbers may show a shadow-like duplication. Another type of error involves die deterioration. Over time, the metal dies that strike coins begin to wear out. When that happens, the details on the coin may look thicker or distorted. Collectors often study these features closely with magnification. If a rare error is discovered and confirmed by experts, the value of that penny can increase dramatically. So how can you tell whether your 1988 penny without a mint mark might be valuable? The first step is to examine the condition of the coin. Look for sharp details in Lincoln's hair, clear lettering, and minimal scratches. A bright, original surface usually indicates the coin has not circulated very much. Next, check carefully for unusual features. Look closely at the date, the letters in Liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust." If any of these appear doubled or strangely shaped, the coin might have a variety worth investigating. Using a small magnifying glass can help reveal details that are difficult to see with the naked eye. Another important step is weighing the coin. Since the 1988 penny should weigh around 2.5 grams, a significantly different weight might suggest something unusual. However, small differences can occur from normal where if you believe you have found a rare variety or an extremely high-quality coin, collectors often recommend sending it to a professional grading service. These organizations examine the coin, verify its authenticity, and assign an official grade. Once graded and sealed in a protective holder, the coin becomes much easier to sell or auction to collectors. There are also a few fun facts about the 1988 Lincoln penny that many people find surprising. For example, even though billions were produced, the number of top-condition survivors is actually very small. Most coins entered circulation immediately and were used for everyday purchases. Over time, they became scratched, darkened, or damaged. That means finding a truly flawless 1988 penny today is much harder than it sounds. Another interesting detail is how many collectors began their hobby with coins just like this. The Lincoln penny has always been one of the easiest coins for beginners to search because it appears frequently in everyday change. For decades, people have searched through jars, piggy banks, and pocket change hoping to discover a rare date or unusual error. Sometimes those discoveries really do happen. The 1988 penny also represents a period of transition in American coin production. The shift from copper to zinc had already taken place a few years earlier, and the mint was continuing to refine its manufacturing process. Small differences in dies and mint mark punches during this time created varieties that collectors still study today. Today, coin collectors appreciate the 1988 no-mint mark Lincoln penny not because it is extremely rare, but because it reminds us that valuable discoveries can hide in the most ordinary places. It teaches an important lesson about coin collecting. Value is not always about age. Sometimes it is about condition, small details, or unexpected errors that only careful observation can reveal. So the next time you see a penny lying on the ground or sitting in your change, you might want to take a closer look before ignoring it. That small coin could hold a story from the past, a tiny piece of American history that traveled through countless hands over the years. And who knows, somewhere out there, another 1988 Lincoln penny without a mint mark might still be waiting to surprise someone who decides to look just a little bit closer. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering that the tiny coin in your hand might actually be worth far more than 1 cent. Most people never look closely at their change, but sometimes an ordinary-looking penny can hide a fascinating story and even surprising value. One such coin is the 1995 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks completely normal, but for collectors and coin enthusiasts, this small copper-colored coin has a story worth exploring. The 1995 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was also the first regular circulating U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure instead of a symbolic image like Liberty. Over the decades, billions of Lincoln pennies have been produced, passing through the hands of millions of Americans. The 1995 version is one of those coins that many people have probably seen without realizing its significance. When we talk about a 1995 penny with no mint mark, it simply means the coin was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. For many years, coins struck in Philadelphia did not carry a mint mark at all. That means a blank space under the date usually indicates Philadelphia production. In 1995, the United States Mint was producing enormous numbers of pennies to keep up with demand. In fact, billions of pennies were struck that year, making the coin very common in everyday circulation. On the front of the coin, known as the obverse, you will see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing to the right. This design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and has remained one of the most recognizable coin designs in the world. Above Lincoln's head are the words, "In God We Trust." To the left of the portrait is the word "Liberty," and to the right is the date 1995. If there is no small letter beneath the date, that means the coin was minted in Philadelphia. The back of the coin, known as the reverse, features the Lincoln Memorial. This design was introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely at the memorial building on the coin, you can even see a tiny figure of Abraham Lincoln sitting inside the monument. It is an incredible detail considering the small size of the penny. The metal composition of the 1995 Lincoln penny is also interesting. Like other pennies made after 1982, the coin is primarily made of zinc with a thin copper plating on the outside. This gives the coin its familiar copper color while keeping production costs lower. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and has a diameter of about 19 millimeters. So if billions were produced, why do collectors pay attention to the 1995 penny with no mint mark at all? The answer lies in certain varieties and errors that occurred during production. While most 1995 pennies are worth only face value, some rare versions can be significantly more valuable. One of the most famous varieties from that year is the 1995 double die obverse penny. In this variety, parts of the design appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. When you look closely at certain letters such as those in Liberty or the numbers in the date, you may see a clear doubling effect. This is not damage or wear. It is a minting variety created before the coin was even struck. Collectors love double die coins because they are genuine mint errors that slipped into circulation. The 1995 double die penny is one of the most recognized modern varieties. Even though millions of pennies were produced that year, only a small number show this distinctive doubling. Because of this, some of these coins have sold for surprising amounts. A typical 1995 penny with no mint mark in circulated condition is still worth about 1 cent. However, if the coin is in exceptional condition, especially in a high mint state grade, collectors might pay a few dollars or more. The real excitement appears when the coin has the double die feature. Well-preserved examples of the 1995 double die penny have sold for hundreds of dollars. In some cases, coins graded by professional services in near-perfect condition have sold for even more. These results remind collectors that sometimes valuable coins are still hiding in everyday change. If you are curious about checking your own coins, there are a few things to look for. First, examine the date carefully. It should clearly read 1995 with no letter beneath it. That indicates it came from the Philadelphia Mint. Next, look closely at the word Liberty and the date using a magnifying glass. On a genuine double die coin, the letters may appear slightly thickened or doubled, especially around the edges. The doubling should look sharp and part of the design itself rather than blurry or scratched. Another important step is checking the overall condition of the coin. Coins that still have their original shine and sharp details are more valuable to collectors. Heavy wear, scratches, or discoloration can lower the value significantly. Because coin collecting has grown in popularity, some counterfeit coins and altered pieces do appear in the market. A fake might be created by mechanically doubling the design after the coin was struck. However, this type of alteration usually looks rough or uneven compared to the crisp doubling seen on a genuine double die variety. Collectors often rely on professional grading companies to confirm authenticity and condition. These organizations examine coins under magnification and assign them a grade that reflects how well the coin has been preserved. A certified coin in a protective holder can bring higher prices because buyers trust its authenticity. There are also some fun details about the 1995 penny that many people never notice. Even though it is one of the most common coins in circulation, it continues a tradition that has lasted for more than a century. The Lincoln cent has survived multiple design changes, metal composition changes, and even debates about whether the penny should still be produced. Another interesting detail is that if you look extremely closely at the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, you can see Lincoln sitting inside the building. That means Lincoln appears on both sides of the coin, something that was unique in U.S. coinage for many years. For collectors, coins like the 1995 no-mint mark penny represent the thrill of the hunt. Anyone can check their pocket change, old coin jars, or inherited collections. The possibility that a small minting variety could be hiding in plain sight makes coin collecting exciting and accessible to everyone. Many collectors today enjoy searching through rolls of pennies from banks, hoping to spot unusual varieties like the 1995 double die. It takes patience, attention to detail, and sometimes a bit of luck. But the reward of discovering a valuable coin among ordinary ones is what keeps people searching. The 1995 Lincoln penny also reminds us that value is not always obvious at first glance. A coin that most people overlook could carry historical interest, collector demand, and even monetary value if it has the right characteristics. Today, more than 30 years after it was minted, the 1995 penny remains a familiar sight in circulation. Millions are still out there, passing from hand to hand in everyday transactions. Yet among those ordinary coins, a few special examples continue to capture the attention of collectors, so the next time you receive a handful of change, take a closer look at those pennies. Check the date. Look for that missing mint mark under the year. Examine the letters carefully. You might just discover something interesting hiding in plain sight. And who knows, that small coin you almost ignored could turn out to be a fascinating piece of history, a collector's treasure, or simply a reminder that even the most ordinary objects can have extraordinary stories waiting to be discovered. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and almost tossing it aside without a second thought. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, but what if that small copper-colored coin was actually more interesting than it appears? What if a penny from 2003, a coin that millions of people have handled without noticing, could hold small secrets that collectors are quietly searching for today? The truth is, some Lincoln pennies from 2003 are far more fascinating than most people realize, especially the ones without a mint mark. The 2003 Lincoln penny without a mint mark is one of those coins that seems completely ordinary at first glance. It's part of the Lincoln cent series that has been circulating in the United States for more than a century. These coins are familiar to almost everyone. They show the portrait of President Abraham Lincoln on the front and have been used in everyday transactions since 1909. But within this long-running series, certain years and variations attract special attention from collectors, and the 2003 penny is one of those interesting cases. To understand this coin better, we need to go back to the early 2000s. In 2003, the United States Mint produced billions of pennies to keep up with everyday demand. Pennies were still widely used for small purchases, vending machines, and cash transactions. The Lincoln cent design had already been in circulation for decades, and the version used in 2003 featured the familiar portrait created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. Lincoln's profile faces to the right with the word Liberty to the left, the year 2003 on the right, and the phrase "I in God we trust" above his head. The reverse side of the coin in 2003 still used the classic wheat successor design known as the Lincoln Memorial Reverse. This design was introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. On the back of the coin, you can see the Lincoln Memorial Building in Washington, D.C., carefully engraved in small detail. Above the memorial are the words United States of America and E Pluribus Unum, while the denomination 1 cent appears below. Now here's where the story becomes interesting. When a Lincoln penny has no mint mark, it usually means it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. For many years, coins struck in Philadelphia did not carry a mint mark at all. While other mints used letters like D for Denver or S for San Francisco, Philadelphia coins often appeared with no letter beside the date. That's exactly what you'll see on the 2003 no mint mark penny. In total, the Philadelphia Mint produced billions of pennies in 2003. Because the number is so large, most of these coins are still very common today. You might even find one in your spare change. But collectors don't just look at the basic version of the coin. They pay close attention to condition, unusual variations, and rare minting mistakes that sometimes occur during production. The metal composition of the 2003 penny is also worth noting. Earlier Lincoln cents were made mostly of copper, giving them that classic reddish color many people remember. But since 1982, pennies have been made primarily from zinc with a thin copper coating on the outside. This means the 2003 Lincoln penny contains about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and measures 19 millimeters in diameter. Even though the design and metal may seem simple, the minting process itself is very complex. Each coin begins as a small metal blank. These blanks are fed into powerful presses that stamp the design onto both sides with enormous pressure. When millions or even billions of coins are produced, small mistakes can sometimes happen. And those mistakes are exactly what collectors hope to find. For the 2003 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny, a few types of mint errors have been reported. One example is the off-center strike. This happens when the blank coin is not perfectly aligned in the press, causing part of the design to be missing or shifted. Another error collectors watch for is a double strike, where the coin receives two impressions from the dies instead of one. This can create overlapping designs or a blurry appearance. There are also cases where the coin's copper coating is damaged or incomplete during production. Because the core of the penny is zinc, any missing plating can reveal a silvery or gray surface underneath. These unusual appearances can catch the attention of collectors who specialize in mint errors. But what about value? That's the question most people ask when they hear about an unusual penny. In average circulated condition, a regular 2003 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is usually worth only 1 cent. There were simply too many produced for it to be rare. However, condition can make a huge difference. If a 2003 penny has never been used in circulation and still shows its original bright red color, collectors describe it as being in mint state. Coins in this condition are graded on a scale that goes up to 70, with higher numbers indicating better preservation. A well-preserved 2003 Lincoln penny graded around MS65 or higher can sell for several dollars, and sometimes more if it has exceptional color and surface quality. Error coins are where the real excitement begins. Some 2003 pennies with unusual mint errors have sold for significantly higher prices. Off-center strikes, dramatic double strikes, or coins with major plating errors have appeared in auctions and collector marketplaces, sometimes selling for tens or even hundreds of dollars depending on how unusual the error is and how well the coin has been preserved. Another factor that can increase value is professional grading. When a coin is examined and certified by a respected grading service, collectors gain confidence that the coin is authentic and accurately evaluated. Encapsulated coins in high grades often attract stronger interest when they appear at auction. If you want to identify a real 2003 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny, the first step is simply to look beside the date on the front of the coin. If there is no letter next to the year 2003, the coin was struck in Philadelphia. If you see a small D, it came from the Denver Mint instead. That small detail tells collectors exactly where the coin was made. Next, examine the condition. Look for sharp details in Lincoln's hair, clear lettering, and minimal scratches or wear. Coins that have been heavily used in circulation usually show dull surfaces and worn features. The more original detail a coin still has, the more appealing it may be to collectors. A magnifying glass can also help reveal interesting characteristics. Sometimes small doubling in the letters, unusual surfaces, or striking errors can only be seen under magnification. Many collectors enjoy carefully searching through rolls of pennies for exactly these kinds of surprises. There are also a few fun facts about the 2003 Lincoln penny that many people don't realize. One interesting detail is hidden on the reverse design. If you look very closely at the Lincoln Memorial, you can actually see a tiny statue of Abraham Lincoln inside the building. This makes the Lincoln cent one of the few coins in the world that shows the same person on both sides of the coin. Another surprising fact is how many pennies the United States Mint produces each year. In some years, billions of Lincoln cents are created, making them one of the most widely produced coins in American history. Yet even among these massive numbers, Collectors continue to discover small variations and rare errors that make certain coins stand out. Collectors love coins like the 2003 no mint mark penny not because every example is valuable, but because the search itself is exciting. The idea that a rare variation could appear in everyday pocket change keeps people looking closely at coins they might otherwise ignore. It turns ordinary moments, like receiving change from a store, into small treasure hunts. For many collectors, the Lincoln Cent series is also deeply connected to American history. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln has appeared on the penny for more than a century, making it the longest-running design in United States coinage. Each year in the series represents a small chapter in that continuing story. And that brings us back to the simple penny in your hand. A 2003 Lincoln penny without a mint mark might seem ordinary at first glance. Most of them are worth exactly 1 cent. But hidden among the billions produced are a few special examples. Coins with exceptional condition or unusual minting errors that collectors are eager to find, so the next time you receive a handful of change, take a closer look before you spend it. That small copper-colored coin from 2003 could be more interesting than it appears. And for collectors who enjoy the thrill of discovery, even the most ordinary penny can become part of a much larger story waiting to be uncovered. Welcome back. Take a moment and imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering that the tiny copper coin in your hand might be worth far more than 1 cent. It might look ordinary. It might even look like a coin you've seen 1,000 times before. But sometimes the most ordinary coins hide the most interesting stories. And today, we're exploring one of those coins that quietly fascinates collectors across America. The 2006 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, the 2006 Lincoln penny without a mint mark seems completely normal. It's part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series, one of the most recognizable coins in the United States. Millions of Americans see these coins every day in pocket change, cash drawers, and jars at home. But within the sea of everyday pennies, some pieces have details that make collectors stop and look a little closer. The 2006 Lincoln penny belongs to a series that began all the way back in 1909. That year marked the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln, and the United States Mint decided to honor him by placing his portrait on the 1-cent coin. It was the first time a real historical figure appeared on a circulating American coin, and the design quickly became a classic. The front of the coin, known as the obverse, features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln. This design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. Lincoln's calm and thoughtful profile faces to the right, with the word Liberty on the left side and the year of minting on the right. Above Lincoln's head is the phrase "In God We Trust," which has appeared on U.S. coins for generations. The reverse side of the 2006 penny shows the Lincoln Memorial, the famous monument located in Washington, D.C. This design was introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely at the reverse design, you can even see a tiny figure of Lincoln seated inside the memorial building, making it one of the few coins in the world that shows the same person on both sides. Now here is where the story gets interesting. Some 2006 pennies show a small letter below the year on the front of the coin. You might see a D, which means the coin was made at the Denver Mint. But many 2006 pennies have no mint mark at all. When collectors see a coin with no mint mark, it raises an important question. Where did it come from? For modern Lincoln cents, a missing mint mark usually means the coin was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. Philadelphia has been one of the main coin-producing facilities in the United States for more than 2 centuries. Unlike the Denver or San Francisco mints, Philadelphia did not always place a mint mark on pennies. As a result, millions of Lincoln cents produced there simply show the date with no letter underneath. In 2006, the Philadelphia Mint produced an enormous number of Lincoln pennies. In fact, more than 4 billion coins were struck that year at Philadelphia alone. That means the 2006 penny with no mint mark is not technically rare in the traditional sense. However, rarity in coin collecting is not always about how many were made. Sometimes it's about condition, unusual variations, or hidden minting errors. The 2006 Lincoln penny is made primarily from zinc with a thin copper coating. Since 1982, most U.S. pennies have used this zinc core because copper became too expensive for mass production. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and measures roughly 19 millimeters in diameter. Even though it looks like solid copper, most of the metal inside is actually zinc. Collectors often examine these coins carefully because small minting mistakes can occasionally slip through the production process. These errors can turn an everyday penny into something surprisingly valuable. One example is a double die error. This happens when the coin's design is accidentally stamped twice in slightly different positions during the die creation process. If a double die exists on a 2006 penny, you might notice slight doubling in the letters or numbers on the coin. These varieties are highly sought after because they are much less common than normal coins. Another possible error involves off-center strikes. Sometimes a coin blank enters the press incorrectly, causing the design to appear partially missing or shifted to one side. Off-center pennies are immediately noticeable and often attract strong interest from collectors. There are also cases of broad strike errors, where the coin is struck without the retaining collar that normally keeps the shape perfectly round. This causes the coin to spread outward slightly, giving it a wider appearance than a standard penny. While most 2006 no-mint mark pennies remain worth just 1 cent, coins with dramatic mint errors can sell for much more. Some error coins from this year have appeared on online auctions and coin marketplaces for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on the rarity of the mistake and the overall condition of the coin. Condition is extremely important in coin collecting. A penny that has spent years circulating through cash registers and pockets will show scratches, dull color, and worn details. But a coin that was never circulated, often called mint state, can look almost brand new. These high-quality coins are far more desirable to collectors. Professional grading companies examine coins carefully and assign them grades based on their condition. A 2006 no-mint mark penny in perfect mint state condition, especially with a strong red copper color, can sell for significantly more than a typical circulated example. Some pristine specimens graded MS-67 or higher have sold for surprising amounts compared to their face value. If you want to identify a genuine 2006 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, the process is fairly simple. First, check the date under Lincoln's portrait. It should clearly read 2006. Next, look directly below the date. If there is no letter present, the coin was minted in Philadelphia. Then examine the coin's details carefully. Look at Lincoln's hair, the lettering, and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse side. Sharp, well-defined features usually indicate a coin that has experienced less wear. Collectors often use a magnifying glass or coin loop to inspect coins closely. This helps reveal small details such as doubling, die cracks, or other unusual characteristics that might increase the coin's value. Another important step is checking the coin's color. Lincoln cents are often described with 3 color categories: brown, red-brown, and red. Freshly minted coins display a bright copper-red color that gradually darkens over time. Coins that still retain their original red appearance are typically more desirable to collectors. There are also a few interesting facts about the 2006 Lincoln penny that many people don't realize. For example, if you look carefully at the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse side, the tiny statue of Lincoln inside the building is actually visible even on such a small coin. This tiny detail amazed collectors for decades and became one of the most famous hidden elements in American coin design. Another fascinating detail is how long the Lincoln Memorial design remained in use. From 1959 until 2008, this reverse design appeared on billions of pennies. That makes it one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. In 2009, the design was temporarily replaced with 4 special reverse designs celebrating different stages of Abraham Lincoln's life. Then in 2010, the reverse changed again to the Union Shield design that we still see on pennies today. Because of these design changes, coins like the 2006 Lincoln Memorial penny represent the final years of a classic American coin design that lasted nearly half a century. Collectors today continue searching through rolls of pennies and jars of spare change hoping to find coins with unusual features. Sometimes the excitement isn't just about finding a valuable coin. It's about the thrill of discovery and the connection to American history. Every Lincoln penny carries a story about the time it was made, the people who used it, and the journey it took through everyday life. A single coin might have passed through hundreds of hands over the years, traveling across cities and states before finally ending up in someone's collection. That is one of the reasons collectors love the Lincoln Cent series so much. These coins are accessible, familiar, and full of history. Anyone can start collecting them, and sometimes the next interesting discovery could be sitting quietly in your pocket change. So the next time you come across a 2006 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, take a closer look before you spend it. Check the details, study the design, and see if anything unusual stands out. Most will be ordinary coins, but every once in a while, a small detail can turn a simple penny into something truly special. And that's the fascinating part of coin collecting. Hidden among billions of everyday coins are small pieces of history waiting to be noticed. All it takes is curiosity, a careful eye, and the willingness to look a little closer at the coins we usually ignore. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a simple penny. A coin so common that most people barely glance at it before tossing it into a jar. But what if that small copper-colored coin in your hand was actually worth far more than 1 cent? What if a single detail on that penny could make collectors stop, look closer, and sometimes pay surprising amounts of money for it? Today we're taking a closer look at the 2007 Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of Americans have seen, but very few have truly examined. The 2007 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, one of the most recognizable coins ever produced in the United States. First introduced in 1909 to celebrate the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln, the Lincoln cent became the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure. For nearly a century after its introduction, the design remained largely the same, making it one of the longest-running designs in American coinage history. By 2007, the Lincoln cent had already been circulating for almost 100 years. The coin continued to carry the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design originally created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. On the back, the classic Lincoln Memorial design still appeared, showing the famous monument in Washington, D.C. This reverse design had been in use since 1959 and would remain until the special redesigns that arrived in 2009. The 2007 D penny was produced at the Denver Mint, which is why it carries the small letter D just below the date on the front of the coin. That tiny mint mark tells collectors exactly where the coin was struck. The Denver Mint produced billions of pennies over the decades, and in 2007 alone it struck well over 3 billion Lincoln cents. At first glance, that large number might make the coin seem completely ordinary. And in many ways, it is. Most 2007 D pennies are worth exactly 1 cent in everyday circulation. But collectors know that within those billions of coins, there can be small variations, unusual minting mistakes, and exceptional high-quality examples that are far more valuable. The 2007 Lincoln penny is made from a copper-plated zinc composition. Since 1982, most U.S. pennies have been made with a zinc core covered in a thin layer of copper. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and measures just under 20 millimeters in diameter. Even though the metal inside changed decades ago, the coin still keeps the familiar copper color that Americans associate with pennies. The front of the coin shows Abraham Lincoln facing to the right. Above his head appears the word Liberty, while the year 2007 is placed in front of his chest. Just beneath the date sits the small D mint mark indicating it was struck in Denver. The phrase "In God We Trust" runs along the top edge of the coin. On the reverse side, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly in the center. If you look closely, you can actually see the tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. This small detail fascinated collectors for decades, because the same president appears on both sides of the coin. The words United States of America curve along the top, while E pluribus unum appears above the memorial and 1 cent is written along the bottom. While millions of these coins were produced, collectors pay attention to the condition of a coin more than almost anything else. A 2007 D penny that has spent years bouncing around in pockets and cash registers will usually show scratches, dull color, and worn surfaces. Those coins are extremely common. But if a coin was preserved in nearly perfect condition from the moment it left the mint, its value can increase dramatically. In the coin collecting world, condition is measured using grading scales. Coins graded in mint state, meaning they were never circulated, can sometimes sell for far more than face value. For example, a typical circulated 2007 D penny might be worth only 1 cent. But a flawless example graded at the highest levels can sell for many dollars, sometimes even more depending on demand. Another reason collectors search through modern pennies is the possibility of mint errors. During the minting process, coins are struck by powerful machines operating at incredible speed. Occasionally, something unusual happens. A coin might be struck slightly off-center, leaving part of the design missing. Sometimes the design may appear doubled, creating what collectors call a double die error. In other cases, the coin may have been struck on the wrong type of metal blank. While major errors are rare, they do occur, and when they do, collectors become very interested. A 2007 D penny with a clear minting error can sometimes sell for hundreds of dollars depending on the type and visibility of the mistake. Even small errors can attract attention if they are unusual enough. There have been auction listings and collector sales where exceptional modern pennies surprise people with their final prices. A beautifully preserved 2007 D Lincoln penny graded at a very high mint state level has sold for well over $100 at specialized coin auctions. That may sound surprising for a coin made in the billions, but rarity and condition can make all the difference. For collectors, finding one of these high-quality coins often means carefully searching through rolls of pennies obtained from banks. This hobby, sometimes called coin roll hunting, has become very popular among collectors who enjoy the excitement of discovering something unusual hidden among everyday coins. If you ever want to check whether your 2007 D penny might be special, there are a few things to examine. First, look at the overall condition. Does the coin still have bright, original color? Are the details of Lincoln's hair and the Lincoln Memorial sharp and clear? Coins with very little wear are always more desirable. Next, look carefully at the lettering and numbers on the coin. Using a magnifying glass can help reveal doubling or unusual shapes in the letters. Also check whether the design appears perfectly centered. If part of the design is cut off at the edge, the coin may have been struck off-center. Another important detail is the weight. Authentic 2007 pennies should weigh about 2.5 grams because of their zinc core. If a coin weighs significantly more or less, it might have been struck on an unusual blank, which can sometimes increase its value. Of course, collectors also enjoy learning interesting facts about coins like this one. For example, the Lincoln cent is the longest-running coin design in American history. From 1909 until 2008, the basic portrait of Lincoln remained unchanged, making it familiar to generations of Americans. Another fascinating detail is hidden within the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. If you look closely enough, you can actually see the tiny statue of Abraham Lincoln sitting inside the monument. That means the same historical figure appears on both sides of the coin, something rarely seen in coin design. The year 2007 is also interesting because it came just before the major Lincoln cent redesign of 2009. In that year, the U.S. Mint released 4 different reverse designs celebrating the 200th anniversary of Lincoln's birth and the 100th anniversary of the Lincoln cent. Because of that upcoming change, coins like the 2007 D penny represent the final years of the long-running Lincoln Memorial design. Collectors today appreciate the 2007 D penny not because it is extremely rare, but because it is part of a larger story. It represents the final chapter of a design that lasted nearly half a century on the back of the coin. For many collectors, completing a full set of Lincoln Memorial cents means including coins from every year and every mint, including Denver. What makes coin collecting so exciting is that valuable discoveries can still happen anywhere. A coin jar sitting on a kitchen counter, a handful of change from the grocery store, or an old roll of pennies from the bank could contain a coin that stands out. The 2007 D Lincoln penny reminds us that even modern coins deserve a second look. Most people see only 1 cent, but collectors see history, craftsmanship, and sometimes hidden value waiting to be discovered. So the next time you come across a penny dated 2007 with a small D beneath the year, don't rush to spend it without looking closely. Examine the details, check the condition, and imagine the journey that tiny coin may have taken since leaving the Denver Mint nearly 2 decades ago. Because in the world of coin collecting, the most ordinary coin can sometimes tell an extraordinary story, and occasionally it might even turn out to be far more valuable than anyone expected. Welcome back. Imagine picking up a small copper penny from a jar of loose change, something most people would barely notice. Now imagine discovering that this ordinary-looking coin could hold a fascinating story from American history and, in some cases, even carry surprising value among collectors. Today we're exploring the 1960 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that may seem simple at first glance but has captured the attention of collectors for decades. The 1960 D Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced by the United States Mint in Denver. The small letter D below the date tells us it was minted in Denver, Colorado. At the time, pennies were an important part of daily life. They were used everywhere, from grocery stores to newspaper stands, and millions were produced each year to keep the economy moving. Because of this, many people assume coins from the 1960s are common and not worth much. But the truth is that certain varieties and conditions can make this coin far more interesting than most people expect. The Lincoln cent itself has a long history. It was first introduced in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the birth of President Abraham Lincoln. This was the first time a real historical figure appeared on a regular United States coin. The design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, and his portrait of Lincoln became one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. By 1960, the Lincoln penny had already been circulating for more than 50 years, becoming a familiar symbol in everyday American life. The year 1960 was a time of change in the United States. The country was entering a new decade filled with technological progress, political shifts, and cultural transformation. During this time, the Denver Mint was working around the clock producing coins for the growing economy. In that single year, the Denver Mint struck more than 1.5 billion Lincoln pennies. That number alone might make the coin seem extremely common. But within that massive production, something unexpected happened that would make the 1960 D penny especially interesting to collectors. One of the most famous aspects of the 1960 penny series is the difference between what collectors call the small date and the large date varieties. This happened because the design of the numbers in the date was modified during the year. Early in production, the digits in the date appeared smaller and more delicate. Later, the Mint adjusted the design so the numbers appeared larger and slightly different in shape. For collectors, this difference is extremely important. When you look closely at a 1960 D penny, the shape of the numbers in the date can determine whether the coin is a common variety or a much scarcer one. The small date version has a distinct look. The numbers appear thinner, and the zero in the date is more rounded and level with the other digits. In contrast, the large date variety shows thicker numbers, and the shape of the zero looks slightly different. While both versions were produced at the Denver Mint, the small date 1960 D penny is far more difficult to find in high-quality condition. Most coins from that era circulated heavily. They passed through countless hands, pockets, and cash registers. As a result, many surviving examples show wear, scratches, or fading detail. When collectors discover a well-preserved example with sharp details and bright original color, it can become a very desirable coin. The metal composition of the 1960 D Lincoln penny also tells an interesting story. At that time, pennies were made from 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This composition gave the coin its warm reddish color when it was freshly minted. Over time, exposure to air and handling can cause the surface to darken to a brown tone. Collectors often classify pennies by color, using terms like red, red-brown, and brown to describe their appearance. Coins that retain their original bright red color are usually the most valuable because they are harder to find. Beyond the small date and large date varieties, collectors also search for minting errors. Errors occur when something unusual happens during the coin production process. For example, a coin might be struck slightly off-center, or the design might appear doubled due to a slight misalignment of the die. While most 1960 D pennies were produced normally, a few error examples have appeared over the years, and these can be worth significantly more than regular coins. So how valuable can a 1960 D Lincoln penny actually be? In circulated condition, most examples are still worth only a few cents or perhaps a small premium above face value. However, the story changes when we look at high-grade coins or the small date variety in exceptional condition. A well-preserved 1960 D small date penny graded at the highest levels by professional coin grading services has sold for hundreds, and in rare cases even over $1,000 at auction. Collectors often rely on grading systems to determine a coin's quality. Coins are evaluated on factors like surface condition, strike detail, and overall appearance. A coin with sharp lines in Lincoln's portrait, clear lettering, and minimal marks will receive a higher grade. Higher grades usually mean higher value, especially when the coin is already considered scarce in that condition. If you think you might have a 1960D penny that could be special, there are a few simple things to check. First, look under the date to confirm the small D mint mark. Next, examine the size and shape of the numbers in the date. Comparing your coin with reference images online can help determine whether it is the small date or large date version. Finally, inspect the overall condition of the coin. Coins that still have bright red color and minimal wear are the most promising, of course. Collectors also need to be careful about counterfeits or altered coins. While fake pennies are less common than fake gold or silver coins, alterations can happen. Sometimes people try to modify dates or mint marks to make a coin appear rarer than it actually is. Using a magnifying glass can help you look for signs of tampering, such as unusual scratches around the mint mark or inconsistent surfaces. When a coin appears particularly valuable, many collectors choose to have it authenticated and graded by a professional service. Another fascinating detail about the 1960D penny is how it connects everyday life with the world of collecting. At the time these coins were produced, millions of Americans used them without a second thought. They paid for candy, bus fares, and newspapers. Yet decades later, some of those same coins have become small pieces of history sitting in collections, coin albums, and auction displays. Many collectors enjoy searching through rolls of pennies from banks or old jars of change at home. The thrill comes from the possibility that a rare variety or well-preserved coin might still be hiding among ordinary coins. Even though the chances are small, the excitement of discovery keeps people searching. There are also fun stories about collectors who found valuable coins in the most unexpected places. Some discovered rare pennies in inherited coin collections, while others spotted them in pocket change while buying coffee or groceries. These stories remind us that history sometimes hides in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. Today, the 1960D Lincoln penny continues to hold a special place among collectors of modern U.S. coins. It represents a time when the mint was producing enormous numbers of coins for a rapidly growing nation. Yet small design changes created varieties that collectors still study and pursue today. It's a perfect example of how even a 1-cent coin can become fascinating when you look closely enough. For many people, collecting coins isn't only about money. It's about history, discovery, and the stories behind the objects we use every day. A single penny can connect us to the past, to the people who designed it, the workers who produced it, and the countless individuals who once carried it in their pockets. So the next time you come across a penny dated 1960 with a tiny D beneath the year, take a moment to look a little closer. Examine the shape of the numbers. Notice the color of the metal. Think about where that coin might have traveled during the last 60 years. Because sometimes the smallest coins carry the biggest stories. And hidden among ordinary pocket change, a simple 1960D Lincoln penny might just turn out to be far more interesting and more valuable than anyone ever expected. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a single penny, and realizing that this tiny copper coin could be worth far more than 1 cent. To most people, a penny is the smallest and least interesting coin in circulation. But for collectors, certain pennies carry stories, history, and sometimes surprising value. One such coin is the 1970D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a small coin that continues to attract attention from collectors across the United States. The 1970D Lincoln penny was produced at the Denver Mint, which is why it carries the small letter D just below the date on the front of the coin. At first glance, it looks like any other penny from the era. It shows the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Yet behind this ordinary appearance is a coin with an interesting place in American coin history. The Lincoln cent design had already been around for more than 60 years by the time the 1970 penny was minted. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln first appeared on the 1-cent coin in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and became the first circulating U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure, BY 1970. The Lincoln penny was one of the most recognizable coins in America. Millions of Americans used it every day for small purchases, vending machines, and pocket change. During that year, the United States Mint produced pennies at 3 different facilities: Philadelphia, San Francisco, and Denver. The Denver Mint struck the coins with the small D mint mark that collectors look for today. More than 2 billion 1970D pennies were produced, which means the coin itself is not rare in everyday condition. However, what makes this coin interesting is not just how many were made, but the special variations and errors that appeared during the minting process. The coin itself is made primarily of copper. In fact, pennies from this period are composed of about 95% copper and 5% zinc. This gives the coin its warm reddish color and also makes it heavier than modern pennies produced after 1982. On the front of the coin, you will see the portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing right. Above his head appears the national motto, "In God We Trust." To the left is the word Liberty, and below the date sits the small D mint mark that identifies the Denver Mint as the place where the coin was struck. On the reverse side is the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely at the center of the memorial, you can actually see a tiny representation of the Lincoln statue sitting inside. This tiny detail has fascinated collectors for decades because it essentially shows Abraham Lincoln appearing on both sides of the coin. Now here is where the story becomes more interesting. While most 1970D pennies are common, some rare varieties exist that can be surprisingly valuable. One of the most talked about varieties among collectors is the 1970D small date penny. To understand why this matters, you have to look closely at the numbers in the date. On the small date variety, the numbers appear thinner and slightly more compact. The number 7 in the date sits level with the 0, rather than slightly higher as seen on the large date version. At first glance, the difference may seem tiny, but collectors pay close attention to these small details. The small date version was produced in smaller numbers, making it harder to find today. When a 1970D small date penny is found in excellent condition, its value can be much higher than a normal penny. Coins graded in mint state condition, meaning they show almost no wear, can sell for dozens or even hundreds of dollars depending on their quality. Another reason collectors study this coin carefully is the possibility of mint errors. Mint errors occur when something unusual happens during the production process at the mint. These mistakes can create coins that look slightly different from normal issues. For example, some collectors search for double die errors on Lincoln pennies. A double die occurs when the design is accidentally stamped twice at slightly different angles during the creation of the coin die. This can cause letters or numbers to appear doubled when viewed closely. While the most famous double die pennies come from other years, collectors still examine 1970D pennies carefully under magnification to check for unusual details, die cracks, or striking errors that could make the coin more valuable. Condition also plays a major role in the value of a 1970D penny. Most coins spent decades in circulation, passing through thousands of hands. Over time, this causes scratches, fading, and wear that reduce the coin's collector value. However, if a coin was preserved carefully, perhaps stored in a collection or coin roll since the day it was minted, it could remain in near-perfect condition. These high-grade coins are the ones collectors compete for at auctions and coin shows. There have been examples where pristine 1970D pennies graded by professional coin grading companies have sold for impressive prices. While ordinary circulated examples may still be worth just 1 or 2 cents, top-grade coins have reached prices well above $100 when collectors compete for the finest examples. This difference in value shows why coin collectors always emphasize the importance of condition. 2 coins from the same year and mint can have dramatically different prices simply because one has been preserved better than the other. Of course, with valuable coins comes the possibility of counterfeits or altered coins. Fortunately, identifying a genuine 1970D penny is usually straightforward. First, look carefully at the mint mark. The D should appear small and neatly placed beneath the date. If the mint mark looks unusually large, uneven, or poorly shaped, it may indicate an altered coin. Next, check the color and weight. Genuine pennies from 1970 are copper-based and should weigh about 3.11 grams. If the coin appears unusually light or has a strange color, it may not be authentic. Collectors also recommend examining the coin under good lighting and magnification. Details such as the lettering, Lincoln's hair, and the steps of the Lincoln Memorial should appear sharp and natural on a genuine coin. Another fascinating detail about the 1970 Lincoln penny is how it reflects the economic changes of its time. During the late 1960s and early 1970s, the cost of copper began rising significantly. This would eventually lead the U.S. Mint to change the composition of the penny in 1982, switching from mostly copper to a zinc core with a thin copper coating. Because of this change, many collectors enjoy saving pre-1982 pennies like the 1970D coin. These older pennies contain much more copper than modern ones, giving them both historical and material interest. There are also some fun details that many people overlook when examining Lincoln pennies. For example, the Lincoln Memorial design on the reverse actually allows you to see Lincoln twice on the same coin. His portrait appears on the front, and his statue appears inside the memorial on the back. Another interesting fact is that pennies are one of the most widely collected coins in the United States. Many collectors began their hobby simply by searching through pocket change or saving pennies in jars. Because billions of Lincoln cents were produced over the decades, collectors enjoy the challenge of finding rare varieties hidden among common coins. The 1970D penny is a perfect example of this excitement. Most examples are ordinary, but the possibility of discovering a valuable variety keeps collectors searching. Today, coin collecting remains one of the most popular hobbies in America. From young beginners to experienced numismatists, people continue to explore rolls of pennies looking for unusual dates, mint marks, and rare varieties. The 1970D Lincoln penny reminds us that even the smallest coin can hold a story. It represents a time when copper pennies filled cash registers, when the Lincoln Memorial design was still new to many Americans, and when the United States Mint was producing billions of coins to keep up with a growing economy. For collectors, the thrill lies in the details. A small difference in the shape of a number, an unusually sharp strike, or a rare mint error can transform a simple penny into a treasured collectible. So the next time you see a penny dated 1970 with a small D beneath the date, take a closer look. It may be common, or it might be one of the more interesting varieties that collectors search for. And that is the magic of coin collecting. Hidden among everyday pocket change could be a coin with history, character, and unexpected value waiting to be discovered. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering that the tiny copper coin you almost ignored could actually be worth far more than 1 cent. It sounds unbelievable, but for coin collectors across the United States, this kind of discovery happens more often than people think. Today, we are going to explore the story of the 1979 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that many people have handled without realizing the history and hidden value it may carry at first glance. The 1979 Lincoln penny looks like an ordinary coin. It's small, copper-colored, and features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln that Americans have seen on pennies for generations. But this particular coin, struck in 1979 at the Denver Mint, represents an interesting moment in American coin production. For collectors and coin enthusiasts, even a common-looking coin can hold fascinating details that make it worth studying closely. The Lincoln Cent series began in 1909 to celebrate the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. It was the first regular United States coin to feature a real historical person rather than a symbolic figure. The design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, whose portrait of Lincoln has remained one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. By the time 1979 arrived, the Lincoln penny had already been in circulation for 70 years, becoming one of the most familiar coins in American pockets. The 1979 D penny was produced at the United States Mint facility in Denver, Colorado. The small letter D on the coin indicates where it was minted. During the late 1970s, the U.S. Mint was producing enormous numbers of pennies because they were still heavily used in everyday transactions. In 1979 alone, the Denver Mint struck more than 4 billion Lincoln pennies. That may sound like an overwhelming number, but within such huge production runs, unusual variations and rare errors can sometimes appear. The coin itself is made mostly of copper. Pennies from 1979 contain about 95% copper and 5% zinc, which was the standard composition used for many decades. The weight of the coin is about 3.11 grams, and its diameter is just under 3/4 of an inch. These copper pennies from before the early 1980s are often slightly heavier than modern pennies, which later switched to a different metal composition. On the front of the coin, also called the obverse, you see Abraham Lincoln facing to the right. Above his head is the word Liberty, and to the right of his portrait is the date 1979. Just beneath the date you will find the small D mint mark, showing that it was produced in Denver. The phrase "In God We Trust" appears across the top of the coin. The back of the coin, known as the reverse, features the Lincoln Memorial. This design was introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely at the memorial on the coin, you can actually see a tiny statue of Abraham Lincoln sitting inside the building. It's a small detail that many people never notice, but it shows the incredible level of detail the designers achieved. Most 1979 D pennies are very common and are usually worth only a few cents above face value. However, collectors know that certain coins from this year can be worth much more depending on their condition and whether they contain rare minting errors. One of the most important factors in determining value is condition. Coins that have never been circulated and still show their original mint luster are known as uncirculated coins. These coins may appear bright, shiny, and free of scratches or wear. High-grade examples graded by professional services can sometimes sell for significantly higher prices than ordinary pennies. For example, a 1979 D Lincoln penny graded in near-perfect condition has sold for over $100 at auction. While that may not sound like a fortune, it is an impressive increase from the coin's original 1-cent value. For collectors, finding such a well-preserved coin in circulation is always exciting. Another reason a 1979 D penny might become valuable is because of minting errors. Errors occur during the production process when something unusual happens as the coin is struck. These mistakes can create unique coins that collectors find fascinating. One type of error that collectors watch for is a double die. This happens when the design on the coin appears slightly duplicated, often visible in the lettering or numbers. The effect can make the text look thicker or slightly blurred in certain areas. If a genuine double die is discovered on a 1979 D penny, the coin can attract significant interest from collectors. Another possible error is an off-center strike. This occurs when the blank coin is not properly aligned when the dies strike it. As a result, part of the design may be missing, leaving a blank curved area on the coin. The more dramatic the off-center strike, the more valuable the coin can become. There are also coins known as broad strikes, where the coin was struck without the proper retaining collar. This causes the coin to appear wider and flatter than normal. These unusual shapes immediately catch the attention of collectors. Even small variations such as die cracks or cuds can increase collector interest. A die crack appears as a raised line across the coin's surface and occurs when the metal die used to strike coins begins to crack from repeated use. Because billions of pennies were produced, most people assume that all 1979 D coins must be common. But coin collecting is full of surprises. Sometimes a rare error coin can sit unnoticed for decades in a jar of spare change. For collectors searching through rolls of pennies from banks or old collections, the possibility of discovering one of these hidden varieties adds excitement to the hobby. Many enthusiasts spend hours examining coins under magnification, carefully studying every detail. If you want to identify a genuine 1979 D penny, there are a few simple things to check. First, look at the date on the front of the coin and confirm it reads 1979. Next, check for the small letter D just below the date. This mint mark indicates the coin came from the Denver Mint. You should also check the weight and color. A genuine penny from this year should weigh close to 3.11 grams and have the classic reddish-brown copper appearance. Over time, copper coins may darken or develop a brown patina, but the underlying metal should still match the standard composition. Collectors also recommend using a magnifying glass or coin loop to inspect the lettering and details. This helps reveal possible doubling, cracks, or other unusual features that might increase the coin's value. One interesting fact about the 1979 penny is that it was produced during a period when the cost of making pennies was beginning to rise sharply. Copper prices were increasing, and the U.S. Mint would soon face pressure to find a cheaper alternative metal. Just a few years later, in 1982, the composition of the penny changed to mostly zinc with a thin copper coating. That means coins like the 1979 D penny represent some of the final years of the traditional copper cent. Another surprising detail is how many collectors enjoy searching for high-grade coins from common years. Even though millions were produced, very few survive in nearly perfect condition. Finding a coin that still looks exactly as it did when it left the mint over 40 years ago can be surprisingly difficult. Some collectors also enjoy assembling complete sets of Lincoln pennies by year and mint mark. In those collections, the 1979 D penny holds its own place as part of the long and continuous history of the Lincoln Cent series. For many people, the excitement of coin collecting comes from the idea that valuable pieces of history might still be hiding in everyday change. A coin like the 1979 D penny reminds us that even the smallest objects can carry stories from the past. Think about it. This tiny coin may have passed through thousands of hands over the last 4 decades. It might have traveled across the country, sat in cash registers, or been dropped into jars and forgotten in drawers. Yet it still survives as a small piece of American history. Collectors today continue to search for coins from this era because they represent a time before modern minting changes transformed the penny. The weight, color, and craftsmanship of these copper cents give them a nostalgic appeal that many people appreciate. And occasionally, someone examining a simple penny will notice something unusual. Maybe the lettering looks doubled. Maybe the strike is off-center. Or maybe the coin is in such perfect condition that it stands out immediately. Those discoveries are what keep collectors looking closely at even the most common coins. So the next time you receive a handful of change, take a moment to look at the pennies. Among them, you might find a 1979 D Lincoln Cent quietly waiting to be noticed. It may not always be worth a fortune, but it represents a fascinating chapter in American coinage and a reminder that history often hides in the smallest places. And who knows? The penny sitting unnoticed in your pocket right now could be the very coin that sparks your curiosity and leads you into the world of coin collecting, where even a 1-cent coin can tell an unforgettable story. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a simple penny. Most people would barely glance at it before tossing it into a jar or spending it without a second thought. But what if that small copper-colored coin had a hidden story? A story that could turn an ordinary 1-cent piece into something collectors are willing to pay far more for. Today we're exploring the 1985 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that at first looks completely ordinary, yet holds surprising details that many people overlook. The 1985 D Lincoln penny is part of one of the most famous coin series in American history, the Lincoln Cent. This coin carries the portrait of President Abraham Lincoln, a design that first appeared in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. By the time 1985 arrived, the Lincoln penny had already been circulating for more than 75 years, becoming one of the most recognized coins in the United States. The D Mint mark on this penny tells us where the coin was produced. It stands for the Denver Mint, one of the main facilities responsible for making coins for circulation in the United States. In 1985, the Denver Mint struck billions of pennies to keep up with the country's demand for small change. At the time, the American economy relied heavily on cash transactions, and pennies were still widely used in everyday purchases. Now here's something many people don't realize. The 1985 penny was made during an important era in coin production. Just a few years earlier, in 1982, the U.S. Mint changed the composition of the Lincoln penny. For decades, pennies were made mostly of copper. But rising copper prices forced the Mint to find a cheaper solution. Starting in 1982, most pennies were produced using a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper. The 1985 penny followed this new formula. That means the coin is actually made of about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper plating. The result is a coin that still looks like the classic copper penny but weighs slightly less than older versions. The weight of a typical 1985 penny is about 2.5 grams. This change in metal is one of the easiest ways collectors identify coins from this modern era. Take a close look at the front of the coin, known as the obverse. You'll see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing to the right. Above his head is the word Liberty, while the year 1985 appears in front of him. Just below the date is the small D Mint mark indicating it was struck in Denver. Above Lincoln's head is the national motto, "In God We Trust." Flip the coin over, and you'll find the reverse design that was used on Lincoln pennies from 1959 all the way until 2008. This design shows the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. If you look closely at the center of the building, you can actually see a tiny image of Lincoln's statue inside the memorial. It's a small detail, but it's one of the reasons collectors appreciate the design. At first glance, the 1985 D penny might seem extremely common. After all, the Denver Mint produced over 5 billion of them that year. That's a huge number, and most of these coins still exist today in circulation or coin collections. Because of that, the average circulated 1985 D penny is usually only worth its face value of 1 cent, but here's where things start to get interesting. Even coins with massive production numbers can become valuable under certain conditions. The key factors are condition, rarity within higher grades, and the possibility of minting errors. Condition is one of the most important aspects of coin collecting. A coin that has spent decades in circulation usually shows scratches, fading, and wear. But occasionally, a coin survives in nearly perfect condition. These high-grade coins are graded by professional services using a scale that ranges from poor condition all the way up to mint state 70, which represents a perfect coin. For the 1985 D penny, coins graded at the highest levels can command impressive prices compared to their 1 cent face value. For example, a well-preserved 1985 D penny graded mint state 67 has sold for hundreds of dollars at auction. That's a huge jump from a coin most people ignore in their pocket change. Another reason collectors pay attention to this penny is the possibility of mint errors. Mint errors occur when something unusual happens during the coin striking process. These mistakes can create coins that are visually different from normal ones, and collectors often find them fascinating. One type of error seen on some 1985 pennies is called a double die. This happens when the design is accidentally stamped twice during the die creation process, causing certain letters or numbers to appear slightly doubled. On some examples, you may notice doubling in the date or the lettering. There are also off-center strikes, where the coin is not perfectly aligned when it's struck. This can leave part of the design missing while the rest appears shifted to one side. These kinds of errors are much rarer than regular coins, and they can significantly increase a coin's value. Collectors have also reported occasional examples of 1985 pennies with dramatic plating issues, because these coins are made with a zinc core and copper coating. Sometimes the thin copper layer can bubble, peel, or appear uneven. While minor plating problems are common, extreme examples can attract attention from collectors. Over the years, several high-grade examples of the 1985 D penny have appeared in auctions and collector markets. Some pristine coins graded by professional grading services have sold for prices ranging from around $50 to several $100s depending on quality. Exceptional pieces with flawless surfaces can bring even higher prices when two collectors compete for them. Of course, the majority of 1985 D pennies found in circulation are not worth large amounts. But the exciting part for collectors is the possibility that one hidden in an old jar or coin roll might be in far better condition than expected. If you want to identify a genuine 1985 D Lincoln penny, the process is fairly simple. Start by checking the date on the front of the coin. It should clearly read 1985. Just below the date, look for the small D mint mark. This confirms the coin was struck at the Denver Mint. Next, check the weight if you have access to a small digital scale. A typical 1985 penny should weigh around 2.5 grams due to its zinc core. If the coin weighs closer to 3.1 grams, that could indicate something unusual, such as a rare planchet error where the coin was struck on the wrong metal. Also examine the coin under good lighting or with a magnifying glass. Look closely at the lettering, the date, and the design details. Any unusual doubling, misalignment, or missing elements could suggest a mint error worth investigating further. Another good idea is to compare your coin with images from trusted coin reference guides. Professional grading companies such as PCGS and NGC publish photographs of certified coins that can help collectors learn what to look for. Here's a fun detail many people never notice. On the reverse side of the Lincoln Memorial penny, the tiny statue of Abraham Lincoln inside the memorial is actually visible with magnification. That means Lincoln appears on both sides of the coin, once as the portrait and again as the statue inside the memorial building. This subtle artistic detail is one of the reasons the Lincoln cent design remained in use for so many decades. It combines symbolism, history, and precision in a very small space. Another surprising fact is how many pennies the United States has produced over time. By the mid-1980s, billions of pennies were being struck every year. The 1985 D penny alone had a mintage of over 5 billion coins. If you stack them all together, they would form a massive pile worth millions of dollars in face value alone. Despite these enormous numbers, Coin collectors know that rarity doesn't always come from low production. Sometimes rarity comes from survival in exceptional condition. Finding a decades-old coin that still looks nearly brand new is surprisingly difficult, which is why top-grade examples can command high prices. Collectors today enjoy searching through rolls of pennies from banks, coin shops, or old family collections hoping to discover hidden treasures. Even though most coins are ordinary, the thrill of the hunt keeps the hobby exciting. The 1985 D. Lincoln penny represents a fascinating moment in modern coin history. It reflects the transition to zinc-based coinage, the long-running Lincoln design, and the incredible scale of coin production in the United States during the 1980s. For many collectors, the appeal of this coin is not just about money. It's about history, curiosity, and the simple excitement of discovering something unexpected in everyday pocket change. So the next time you come across a penny, take a moment to look at it more carefully. Check the date. Look for the mint mark. Examine the details under the light, because hidden among millions of ordinary coins could be one that collectors are searching for. And who knows, that tiny copper-colored coin you almost ignored might turn out to be far more interesting than you ever imagined.